Greetings and welcome to Pride of Olympus, where we explore the multiverse of the Star Trek franchise. I'm here with the commander of the USS Challenger and an admiral in Region 7, and one of the bridge crew and an officer in the USS Britannic. And today we will be exploring her journey in the Star Trek universe and into the science fiction universes beyond. But first, Bob, would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Bob Vossler. I'm the long-standing chapter chairperson of the USS Challenger, which is a chapter of Starfleet, the International Fan Association. That chapter formed in 1988, and of course, Starfleet is worldwide with more than 200 chapters all over the place, and that started in 1974. And we are keeping very busy even during this pandemic time. Now that things are starting to improve and getting out there once again, and looking forward to 2022 being a much better year and a more active year, and getting to see some of the people that we haven't seen, especially at upcoming conventions. So we're looking forward to that.
That is also, I'm looking forward to those things as well. Anne-Marie, you've been involved with Star Trek for a very long time.
Long time. I don't remember. Forever.
Forever. So what sparked your interest in Star Trek?
It was the original series when it was on the first round in '66. I was 8, and the other kids started watching it, and of course I had to go with where the other kids were, and then we were kind of like, oh, I'm hooked on this. Except for the last scene where they had that alien with the big long face, and that scared the living daylights out of me. So I would go running out of the room before the very end of the show. But we were all there on, I can remember us on Friday nights. I don't remember when, I know that was the last season was on Friday nights. But yeah, all the other kids did it, so I had to go to it.
Did you watch the cartoon after the series ended, the Filmation cartoon?
Only a couple of them. I wasn't so much into the cartoon as I was into the live action.
And how did you get involved with the conventions and with Star Trek fandom?
Well, I moved around a bit. I was in Iowa City at one point, and I started going to a club based at the University of Iowa. And 20 miles south of Iowa City is Riverside, Iowa, which is the future birthplace of Captain Kirk. So they always had a parade. And for the longest time, Walter Koenig and Nichelle Nichols would come and visit that parade every year for a long time. So it was really good to see 2 of the original members. But it's kind of an interesting place.
I've never been. It's on my bucket list, but I haven't been there yet. Bob, have you been there to the Captain Kirk parade?
No, not to that. No, I would love to get out there.
Just do a voyage there at some point.
Yeah. I also have to make that voyage out to Ticonderoga for the perfect bridge replica set tour that they've done, and they've had special guests. I know other chapters have gone up there, and I think that's something that we're planning to do sometime next year, maybe even as a regional event.
Awesome.
And I'll certainly keep us all up to date as soon as that's, gets to be a solid plan. But, everybody's loved, those that have gone have really loved that experience. It's just a bit of a hike for most of us.
There was a movie, I forget what it was called, but it was a comedy movie about a young man who was dying and he wanted to catch the Star Wars, the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Shatner was kind of helping them, get into George Lucas's ranch.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Star Trek versus Star Wars stuff there, and I think they had visited Kirk's birthplace in that movie.
It's great that a whole town based their, needed a tourist attraction so strong that they borrowed from Star Trek and made this such a special event. I think that's really neat.
Me too. Roswell did that too.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Riverside is a very small town in the middle of cornfields.
Yeah.
Now there's a casino kind of next to it, but it's really in the middle of nowhere. And absolutely the only reason people know of it is because of the future birthplace of Captain Kirk. Otherwise, or the grain elevator, I'm not really sure. It depends on what you're interested in. Tiny, tiny little town.
Are people naming their kids James Kirk or James?
Tiberius or something. I'm not.
Yeah. That'd be interesting to find out.
They have a big plaque
James
on a
Kirk.
stone in Riverside.
That is so cool. And how did you hook up with Starfleet International?
Well, when I moved here and I started going to Challenger, and I found that that group was so nice and I liked it so much. And then I said, let's just make this official. And so that was probably 12 years ago, Bob.
Wow.
Something like that.
Yeah. Time flies. Yeah.
Yeah. And my mom had joined at that time. Then my mom got a little bit sick and she couldn't keep up with it anymore. So, but yeah, and it was so good to find such strong Starfleet roots here with Challenger, with Britannic, which is my ship, not my ship, I'm on the ship, and Avenger and all the other groups that are in this area, really strong ties to Starfleet.
Yeah, the Avenger I don't have contact with yet, but that's on my list of clubs to join. So what made you go from the Challenger to the Britannic?
I actually I took a tour of New Jersey ships, because then it seemed like for a while that every time I joined a ship, it suddenly disbanded. And I was beginning to take it a little bit personally, because first I was on Mobius, that disbanded. Then I was on
Storm.
Thank you, went right out of my head. Storm, that disbanded. Then I went to Avenger and I was on there for a while, but certain things I didn't particularly care for. So now I've ended up on Britannic, which is where I really want to be. So I love Britannic. I wish I could get up to meetings though a little bit more, because they're on Long Island, so it's a 5-hour drive for me to get there. But we do Zoom and Discord meetings too, so I can still keep in touch.
What are your favorite activities in Starfleet? What do you like the most about being a Starfleet officer?
Well, I'm the ship's counselor, which just fits in with me. I'm a really good listener, and that's part of my real life profession too. But I also like the camaraderie a lot, even though I'm not physically close to Britannic, it's still a lot of camaraderie in there. And I really like the courses that Starfleet Academy gives. They're free. And you learn a lot of real life stuff as well as Starfleet stuff. It's really cool. And there's a lot of work being put into that. And of course, I like the conventions, because then you can actually see the people you're talking to from all over the region, and then with the international all over the world, which is really, really interesting. So yeah, it's the people I like the most.
Yeah, there are a lot of excellent people, and I'm very happy that I'm still in contact with Bob. I wish I was more in contact with Wayne, but he seems less available these days. And I've made very many friends over the years in my involvement with the Klingons, some of whom I'm still in contact with thanks to Facebook, but they seem to have scattered for the most part, although some of them are making comebacks. I got some notices recently that some folks from back in the day are coming back and trying to do a Klingon thing. So I invited them on the show if they want to share what it is they want to do, and if they want to play in our playground, they're more than welcome to. Now, in terms of the races of Star Trek, the aliens or the extraterrestrials, are you human in your persona, or have you assumed an alien persona?
I'm human right now, but it may go into, I really love the Cardassians, not to be confused with the Kardashians. Cardassians. I really like that race, and it's an interesting Andy Robinson did so good with Garrick on Deep Space Nine, really bringing that character to life and giving more depth to what Cardassians are, as opposed to they're just a villain, that's it. He gave a lot more depth to it. And in his book, A Stitch in Time, he gives even more depth to the race.
Do you have makeup that, like, have you ever worn like the full Cardassian getup?
Not yet. That's what I want to get. That's what I want to get into. I'm kind of piecing things together. For a long time, I couldn't afford to eat, let alone get anything for Star Trek, for Starfleet or anything. So I'm kind of building that up a little bit.
I have
Yeah,
a
that's a lot of
Cardassian
fun.
mask that
Oh,
I
do
bought
you?
years ago, and it was so tight on my face. I don't know what, but it was just a good price because I did not have an interest in wanting to be, to have a Cardassian, persona or anything. I just thought it might be something cool to have for the parades at that time. We used to do a lot of parades, so I thought, well, that would be cool. So I bought it, and then like brilliantly bought it and then tried to put it on and then realized I was probably going to suffocate. So I actually ended up splitting the sides of it so that it would have more, room. And I still have it. It's still kind of tight, but it looks pretty good. And it looks, even has like hair and stuff. Like, it was probably modeled after Gul Dukat. Yeah.
He's a fascinating character. Gul Dukat.
Another, Mark Alamo, yeah.
And while we're on the topic, have you ever dressed up as another race in Star Trek or in any other sci-fi universe, Bob? Or
Let's see. I once had, yes. Well, I think the first time that I ever went totally non-human was at a creation convention. In fact, it's ironic because here we are in November, Thanksgiving weekend, and I believe it was at a Thanksgiving weekend con back in the day when creation had what we called, Turkey Con on Thanksgiving weekend. And on Black Friday, we would go in and, get a hotel room and for Friday night and Saturday night and stuff as many crew members because we were, always broke. So we would split the cost and, squish as many people as we could in. But I recall being an Andorian, and this is before they really had the antenna or the wig. So I got a wig that made me look like, something out of the Beatles, but white. And I had paper mache antenna, which were gray, and it was actually perfect. And I'm not real crafty, so I was really proud of myself. I put some silver foil over it too and attached it. And unfortunately, there was prongs inside the wig, and was a little painful to wear after a few hours. I didn't have him in a Starfleet uniform. I had this funky wave, that's what I called it. It was white and blue, and it had like a lapel thing on it. It looked kind of spacey, and I thought, well, this would be perfect for like a Andorian warrior, I was kind of thinking of, or an ambassador or something like that. So I wore that. I went with a friend of mine, maybe you knew her at the time. Do you remember Donna Pastor, Kara?
oh yeah, of course, I remember.
Of course you do. I'm sorry. Yeah. So Kara and I and one other person, or maybe it was two other person, her friend who was the Romulan, and
Yes.
maybe my friend, and it's been decades since I've seen her, but Donna something. Anyway, she was a Vulcan, and so, but she wore more like a non-fleet outfit. She had like almost like a robe and stuff. So it was lunchtime, so we went to Roy Rogers in New York City, like right around the block at that time. And we thought, well, yeah, we're going to draw a lot of attention, but we forgot this is New York City. Nothing phases New Yorkers. So we walked in, and here I was, completely blue. And although the one funny thing was, when we came back from lunch, we went through a side entrance because there was a bunch of people in front of the hotel, and we didn't realize that there was some kind of rally going on for Union. So they were like chanting blue, like I guess blue collar power or something. And I walk up, I turned around and I said, blue power. Because and people like chanted like as if I was part of the thing. So I thought that was pretty amusing. We had a good time with that. But nobody in Roy Rogers, they're like, yeah, next sir. Yep. What do you want? So.
Yeah, I remember going to restaurants in like Klingon garb. I started with the Klingon fandom accidentally. It was basically I wanted to do a role-playing game with Greek mythology, but in outer space, because I had these interests, I wanted to merge them together. And I was inspired by Star Trek, who mourns for Adonis, and also Marvel Comics, Bob Layton, who I recently interviewed, which was really cool.
Oh, that must have been nice.
In outer space, the Prince of Power. It was the first miniseries in comics, and he picked it up every few years, and the saga lasted decades. But anyway, I wanted to kind of like, well, what if, Apollo disappeared and Zeus sent Hercules to find out what happened? So I wanted to put together like a role-playing game, and nobody wanted to play it. So it's like, okay. So then I went to the Marvel Comics version altogether, and I introduced Thor and Asgard because I figured more people are probably into that. So I created this Kirby-esque role-playing game, and nobody wanted to play that either. So one day I was reading a Star Trek thing on Klingons, and I liked what they were doing with the Klingons the Klingons were becoming more like Viking bikers, rather than communists that they were, initially.
Yeah.
So I like that. So I was reading up on the Klingons at a FASA module, I think. And so many people came to me, yes, like, oh, what's that? Oh, I love Star Trek. I love, so I like Star Trek too. So it's like, all right, let me do a Klingon role-playing game. And I had no problem signing up people for that. So I took my idea, and I had these Klingons patrolling Klingon space, and they came across a chariot drawn by horses, and Hercules is on there, the recorder. So he met Klingons, and it was like a farcical type of comedy, and people loved it. So all of a sudden I had my campaign. So that lasted for I think 2 or 3 sessions, and then after that I had them encountering Melmacians and Wookiees and Daleks, and so mixing in from science fiction. And then we were looking for other Klingons because people got into it, so we wanted to dress up, we wanted to go to conventions, but I wasn't content with that. I wanted to form like some sort of club. So we got costumes, and we started going to the conventions, and I started contacting groups. And Kashona Jackson was still alive back then, and she had the Klingon embassy. And then John Selba, I think it was, and some other people had the Karazhan Empire.
I remember the Karazhan Empire. Yeah. That was one of the newsletter exchanges.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I bought the Karazhan Empire because they were obscure and nobody'd heard of them. So we developed the motto, we deny nothing. So anything people accused us of, yeah, we did that and we liked it, that type of thing. And then we started putting out a comedy magazine called Void Warrior, where we had different characters from different comedy shows, but it's Klingons.
I remember that too, Void Warrior, yeah.
So so again, it was all tongue in cheek for us and very theatrical, and we started interacting with you guys, and we had outrageous blood drives and all sorts of things. I remember, and we included the Olympian and the Norse stuff in there. So the new Olympus became a place that we'd visit in the role plays. And then when we finally finished with the Klingons, I tried again to take that off the ground. So Dennis, who was the Emperor Kennis, and I had a magazine, Neo Solimbus, and we started doing all these things. But again, that didn't really come together. So now I'm attempting it again now. I'm in my 60s now, and I really want to do it. So I figure if nothing happens, nothing happens. I gave it my best. I can honestly say that. So
was that Dennis Gray? Was that
Dennis Chaffers?
Oh, I'm sorry. Because suddenly I was reminded of Dennis Gray, who I remembered wearing, a Klingon outfit as well at times, from the original series, and maybe Imperial Klingons, as they were later called, later on. So I didn't know if Dennis also dabbled in Klingon fandom as well, but
Yeah, maybe we didn't know him. Our thing for a while was Dennis was very handy, and he created the Klingon embassy, like a sign. And we used to have like the weirdest human foods, like candied fish and mustard balls, and we would go to all these like ethnic places and find the weirdest things that we could possibly find, put them together in cups, and we had like water. So people would come and we would offer them food and we would tell them, come partake of food. This is your custom, you know. And we'd have
Well,
those
well, when we
bizarre-
would host, when my chapter would host the Intergalactic Food Festival, which hopefully we will do once again this coming year, you know, it was always fun to see what would be Klingon Gach this year,
Yeah.
because sometimes it was a dessert, sometimes it was jelly, you know, jelly worms, or, you know, something like that, or sometimes it was chicken fingers, or sometimes it was something else entirely. And, you know, everybody would, you know, bring an actual food and mark it, you know, for what it was representing, and then it would be something, you know, normal.
something else,
But
yeah.
it was always different though, because, you know, Klingon Goth, everybody, and that was part of the fun, is the creativity of what you wanted to adapt it into, you know.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So if you decide to become a Cardassian, that'll be fun too. We can have like our Cardassian segment and
Yes.
get the Cardassian perspective. So you are in real life a person who works in human services and the social services, and you help people.
Yes, I'm actually a peer support specialist with the Mental Health Association of New Jersey.
Awesome.
And I run groups and help people out. And if they have different problems or questions about how can I get help with such and such a thing. And also teach people about my group is about mental health challenges in the news, where I pick one news story and we discuss it read the news story and then we have a discussion about it. And I picked the story because one of the problems we had is if the group picks it, then we might get into political stuff, something like that. And we don't want to do that because that never turns out well.
No.
And we don't want to make people more anxious than they already are. That's not our goal. Our goal is to ease that anxiety and for people to learn. So, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
I was in the human services for many years, so I know how great that feels. I think
Yeah.
half decades I did that. So what is your ultimate dream in Starfleet International? Like, what do you see? Do you see yourself commanding your own vessel? Do you see yourself being the head of the social services department in Starfleet, or what do you see?
Yeah, that's where I want to go first, is the head of I am essentially the head of the counseling department because I am the counselor. And maybe I've entertained being captain of my own ship. I don't know if that's just going to be an entertained thought or what. I've only recently been able to get back a lot into the Star Trek Starfleet universe. So yeah, I entertain that thought, kind of like kids used to entertain being president of the United States. It's out there. Yeah, maybe,
You never know. I'm an elected political official. I never thought that would happen in my life. And I was a write-in. I didn't even know people wrote me in. I got a letter addressed the Honorable Hercules Invictus. It's like, what's this? It's like, you've been elected to the county committee. It's like, oh, wow.
Oh, that's
Very
cool.
cool.
You never know.
That is cool.
And in terms of Star Trek, what is your favorite Star Trek series?
Space Nine, hands down.
Why?
Followed closely by Next Generation. I love Deep Space Nine because they explored the characters so much better than any of the other shows, because it was a long-term show. They did a little bit of it in Next Gen, but they definitely did, and they did more alien races where they got more into the races, as opposed to that's an enemy and that's that, or that's just a weird alien and we see it in one show and never see it again. But Next Gen is kind of like my comfort Star Trek. It's where I go. It's very familiar to me. I could about recite every episode from heart, but it's my comfort Star Trek. If I'm upset or something, let's go to TNG. We'll feel much better.
How about yours, Bob? What's your favorite Star Trek show?
I mean, it's tough for me because I almost want to say it's tied with the original series, but Deep Space Nine has a special place in my heart as well, for many of the same reasons Anne Marie has stated. It was a show that evolved over time, and you saw every single character from the first episode to the last episode had their own special journey and had changed as people, and it was a realistic change. And so much happened within that, and it also offered, for the first time, we had some major characters that were not in Starfleet. We had major characters who were just civilians. We had spies. We had bartenders. We had, so many. It gave you a wider view of the Federation and the universe of Star Trek. We also saw some gray areas, even with the villains. Even with, although you still hated Gul Dukat, but with Kai Wynn and on all that, there was always some certain characters that you didn't like, but you understood more, and it also broke ground with things like racial storylines, and it just really had a special place, and I think it moved the needle for bringing Star Trek up a notch, more so, I think. And it was also the first show that didn't focus entirely on a ship. I mean, yes, we did later on get the Defiant, but it was the first time we saw a space station where things were a little bit more stationary. But it had just such a legacy that it left behind, and we got to see more of the Klingons and other races, and it also was the first show that really went into a story arc and had more continued stories. And I think it built on its own continuity. And I think Deep Space Nine benefited from pretty much having the same creative team and some of the same writers from start to finish. Whereas I think things changed for other shows for various reasons, over time, with the original and Next Gen, Voyager, certainly Enterprise, even Discovery's been tweaked here and there, but Deep Space Nine, I think, went pretty straightforward and went in various different directions, but I think it was all planned. So I think that was a benefit.
With me, it was I like all of them, for one reason or another, and they have different strengths. But I like that era when the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and the movies all took place in the same universe and around the same, and they interconnected with one another. So it's like the MCU before there was an MCU.
Yeah.
And they all told part of a bigger story, and if you watched all three of them, you made all sorts of connections that you wouldn't get if you just watched one of them. And I really got mad at, because I liked Enterprise a lot with Scott Bakula, and they spoiled it at the end by making it a hologram like instructional thing.
Yeah, I was very disappointed in Enterprise's conclusion. I'm not as fond of Enterprise. Of course, I watched it. I think it was a show that was struggling. And then just when it started to maybe reach where they wanted it to go, that's the final season. And then even with the final season, we had that atrocious finale, which was a cheat. It was more like a sandwiched in episode of Next Gen. And I don't, plus it also wrote out major characters. It just did not have a feel-good finale. The best finale I think we ever saw in Star Trek was in fact Deep Space Nine, because it had a finale. We didn't have a finale in the TV series, the original Star Trek TV series.
No.
We would get a kind of a finale with Undiscovered Country. We didn't get one with Next Gen because, of course, we knew Next Gen, months away after it had its finale or its final episode. I mean, it had a good last two episodes, but we knew that basically it was going to continue on with Generations. So really didn't have a big finale. But Deep Space Nine had a profound finale that had impact to it. And well, I should say Voyager also had a decent finale, but not as good as Deep Space Nine, in my opinion. And Enterprise was, I don't even think about it. Just, it was bad. It was a slap in the face. Even the cast didn't like it, and I believe the producer apologized for it years later. That it was,
The Next Gen timeline did a good job too in integrating the original series by having Kirk and Spock and Scotty and Rex and Morass, and they brought everybody seamlessly.
McCoy, and we saw McCoy in the first episode. We would see Scotty and Relics, and of course Ambassador Spock. Which was also connected in around the time of Undiscovered Country, and of course with Generations we had the ultimate team up of captains. So I think that was cool.
And Marie, what era does your persona live in, your Starfleet International persona?
In the Next Generation time period, which would also be the time period of Deep Space Nine. Those two are in the same place. I like that time period, probably because I know the most about that particular time period. I'm more familiar with that. Again, my comfort food is in there.
Well, I know Britannic and Challenger are of the same timeline, which was always Next Gen timeline. But since that timeline has continued on, we're now in the Picard. You would say Picard is the current, even though Discovery has gone way past that. But we would be in, I don't exactly know the years, but we're basically in the Picard timeline, because Wayne keeps talking to me about, we should have been wearing the other uniforms. Like, well, Wayne, who knows when they switched over the Nemesis uniforms to the flashback episode uniforms, and then when they changed those to what is currently on Starfleet Academy, which is, or it's not Starfleet Academy, in Starfleet, which are it's almost a cross between a Next Gen uniform and a Deep Space Nine uniform now. So
Maria said they're in the Stella Pirata is also in the Picard timeline right now.
Yeah, I think most of Starfleet Region 7 is, since they were all the majority of them were, except for say Justice and Avenger, were Next Gen ships. I think most of us are Picard era. There might be a few here and there. Maybe the USS Storm, that is now the USS New Jersey, they may move more classic era. I don't really know. That's a panel that we want to do at a future Region 7 conference. Is having everybody talk about their fictional era and their ship and their things like that.
Now, what would you recommend, Emery, for people who are interested in Star Trek and want to get involved in fandom? How would you recommend that they proceed with Starfleet International and with the other type of activities that you like?
I would say, first of all, take a look at Starfleet, sfi.org, and see what we're all about, and then go and visit a local chapter, because that's the only way you're going to get the flavor of really what's going on, is by actually interacting with us. We're not all that weird. Some of us are, but we're a pretty nice bunch on the whole. So really, I mean, that's what I did in Iowa when I first started up actually going to meetings, was I just looked it up. Where's the closest one, and was it good or was it not? And at the time, the only one that was around was at the University of Iowa, full of college students, but that's okay. Sometimes they have the great ideas.
And Starfleet International is very focused on doing charitable things, for the local communities and for the greater human community. What type of things did you like about what the Challenger did? What type of things do you like about what the Britannic did? What would you like them to do?
What I like is we have a regional thing. In Region 7, we do Cup of Joe, which is buying someone in the military cup of coffee. Because our military works so hard, and sometimes you can't get a decent cup of coffee to save your life in the military. So I really like that charity a lot. That's been going on quite a while in Region 7. Oh man, there's so many of them. I can't really put my I like them all, so it's hard to say which one I like best, because they're all helping people, and that's kind of what that's Starfleet's other mission, is helping people. So.
I know this time of year, usually our auxiliary units of the Starfleet Marines and our local, what they call the brigade, the 7th Brigade in Region 7, usually spearheads the Toys for Tots, to parallel what the U.S. Marines do with the Starfleet Marines. In fact, I was at the Ocean County Mall earlier today and saw that they had a big table and were collecting donations, and
oh, cool.
And they had bought a bin. I was like, yep, it's Black Friday, and that started. And that's something that either as chapters or as members of the Starfleet Marines, we always collected toys, and donated them to either that particular collection, like the official Toys for Tots, or some other Toys for, wherever it goes, it's still going to help kids, and that's the whole point. So I know we did a local collection in Seaside Heights one year at one of our events. We had our holiday gathering, and we said, for those that want to donate, bring them to our event, and then we'll go down the street to a particular collection agent, cause, and just, I think it was the police department, and just, we'll bring them in one big box, and that's what we did. So, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm looking for things that we could do together, like make that some sort of adventure where we do something charitable together. One of the things I've been trying to do is get involved with libraries. Like I've been the president of the Friends of the Cresskill Library for a while now, and before then I was on the Friends on their board. And right now they had a change in director, so they're doing things differently, and then the pandemic hit. So I'm not as active in things as I was before. Before I used to run things at the library, all sorts of activities. And what I did before the pandemic was I had role-playing games, mostly for kids, but they were set in outer space. And again, with the different science fiction universes. So when they went to like a Mars, there was Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars. that they went to.
I love that series. Yeah, John Carter. Yeah.
And then we used to support all the STEM activities in the library. Like there was an astronomy club, and there was like computer coding. So whatever they learned at these clubs would translate into skills in the role-playing game. So the more they had STEM activities, the better their characters would get.
Cool.
That was an incentive to do that. And we used to collect money for like the STEM activities. And then I got involved in after school programs and other STEM things. So I figured that was part of Roddenberry's vision to bring this future, into being. So I want to do something like that. I went to a library meeting and I told them, so when the pandemic finally lifts, we are going to have like a Starfleet meeting place, for science fiction clubs at the library. So that'll be something once a month, and that'll weave into all the other stuff that's going on. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we're going to have a trading too. Like I have tons of science fiction books, and now I'm in my 60s. I'm not going to get to reread most of these, and I know it. So, we had a big flood that destroyed a bunch of them, but I still have a lot more. So I figured I'd donate them to the library, and they could raise some money from the science fiction group who want, could get the books for really cheap. or the DVDs and so forth. And then if they want to trade too, they can bring in stuff they want to trade. And so this way everybody gets the science fiction they want inexpensively, and it benefits the library. So those are all things floating around in the air. We, before the pandemic, we started this astronomy club. I wasn't involved in it other than being very supportive of it and promoting it, but they had a telescope. They'd meet at night, and somebody from the nearest planetarium or observatory would come over and like teach a class. And then we created like a online group, and we had all these links to NASA and to the planet.
Cool.
So they can get all this information. Again, I used to put in the role-playing game to encourage them to do that. So that's kind of like things rolling on the horizon.
We've worked a lot with the library in the past with different programs, and it's always, it's always been a rewarding situation. We usually had what was called Fan Nation that when I worked there, I was part of the committee on. But between the pandemic and also this year with the pandemic, it went virtual, and it's barely a shadow of what it once was. It's not a live event. Last year, I think they just did like a cosplay and you put it up on their social media. This year, I think they tried to have some panels, but it wasn't very well promoted, and we didn't even in the past we were part of it. We didn't even know about it this year. So I guess we're just going to have to wait until it's a live event again, to be involved. So, hopefully 2022, things will get more normal. We're getting there, but, it's not quite there yet.
In the interim, we have things like this. I'm sure everybody's doing stuff like this, and this is art like this. And we have the other science fiction shows too, to broaden the scope beyond Star Trek. In January, I have a Play by Facebook role-playing game starting, and you're invited. I put that up a while ago, so it's going to start in January. We're going to be launching also the Pride of Olympus as a club, as a vessel club. And it's going to be a multi-dimensional time-traveling ship, so we can enter all these other fandoms and do things with them as well, rather than having to create a new Pride of Olympus in every single fandom. We figure that it'll just hop around. And my wife and I used to love going to conventions. Before we hooked up, we used to go to conventions, and so our paths will continuously cross at creation and other conventions. And I remember when we started dating, I told her I was in Star Trek Fandom, and we did a magazine, and we did productions and all this. And she goes, "Really? Who were you?" And I said, I was Cathor. And she goes, "Oh my God, I used to write for you for Void Warrior." So that gave us a connection. And again, if you go to the places where your heart draws you to, you meet the type of people who are like the best people to have in your life. So I found that to be true generally. About all the things I'm currently doing. So that's kind of like the direction we're going in, to develop more science fiction shows, because science fiction inspires people to create what they have in science fiction in the real world. And so that's something that's been proven time and again, like the flip phones. There were the communicators from Star Trek, the original series. Now we have replicators who can even replicate food. The military uses replicators to make parts, for different vehicles. Our phones are tricorders of a sort, and they have all sorts of things. So these things that were beyond doing are now commonplace centuries before science fiction saw them there. And the people who invented these things talked about how they were fans of a certain show, and they wanted that to be a reality. So science fiction to me is phenomenally important and necessary. And a lot of science fiction's gotten dark. I like the fact that Roddenberry, despite his flaws as a human, as we all have, he kept that our quest is one of positivity. And one of that we will eventually get it right, that we'll eventually solve our problems, that we'll eventually figure out how to get into space, we'll eventually take a leadership role, and we'll be a benevolent presence in the universe. So those, I think, are things that we need to inspire us as we move forward. So what I want to ultimately do with what we're currently doing is to kind of support all that, and to collectively and individually do stuff that'll help bring that future into being.
Definitely.
Now, I'm really interested to hear what ideas you guys have for future shows, because with that group, I kind of show what I'm putting together so far, what's actually on the board, but I have like a bunch of stuff in my head floating around that still hasn't made it into solid formula. So I'd love to hear your feedback. Ideally, what would you guys like to see spring from this?
Maybe different angles of story, episodes past and present.
Okay.
And kind of taking an angle on, I don't know, how, say, for example, how an episode could have been improved, or maybe why an episode was so good, and why it resonated so well, what we would have done to change things, or or not change things, or even a review of certain episodes, or talk about different topics of that have come about either within fandom or within Star Trek, new products, new items, new rumors, stuff like that we could talk about.
And the new
the new series,
shows like Prodigy.
Yes.
Is kind of a new look to Star Trek. Looks more like an anime than it does of the animated series.
That's a great idea. How do I watch the new shows? Like, are they streaming on CBS, or do I need to get Paramount Plus? Or
Paramount Plus.
Yeah, there is no CBS All Access anymore. That changed its name to Paramount Plus, I think last March or April, whenever the changeover happened. In fact, it was funny. I told you I went to the movies today, and there was a trailer, and it was, well, not really a trailer, but it was a commercial for a series that I thought was a movie, until they said, this is a series and it's going to be on Paramount Plus, and it's a Western. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I forget that Paramount Plus has other stuff besides just Star Trek. Yeah. So, I mean, I've got to actually go to Paramount Plus and look. It's the only streaming service that I have, because we can't afford all of these streaming services, or we would if we could, but we can't. So, but you pay for it per month. You might as well utilize some of the stuff. And now there's so much content all floating around all over the place. My wife and I we're late bloomers when it comes to the Cobra Kai thing. But my wife loved the Karate Kid series, and we've recently got into that. And I was like, yeah, I'll sit with you and watch this. And I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and it really was. So now, we schedule a time to catch those as well. So, there's things like that pop up. But yeah, Paramount Plus is, I would say that, that was worth getting. If you haven't gotten that.
I will look into it. We got Disney Plus because it has all the MCU.
Disney's a good one too. I mean, there's no denying that Disney has an incredible amount of content, and it has The Mandalorian, and it has Disney, it has all that. So there's a lot. I mean, Netflix, I think, is going away, because I mean, everyone's pulling out their stuff from Netflix to get their own streaming services. Not to say that Netflix doesn't have some nice original stuff of its own, though.
Yeah, I've heard that they're pulling it out. I know that the Marvel did. They pulled stuff off Hulu, Netflix, and so that sounds great. So how about we schedule it into the show, And like a week ahead of time, we'll ask everybody who's involved if they want to talk about any particular show, and we
Yeah.
can back and forth. We can pick one, and then each episode will be one of the shows that played that month
Hmm.
between the last show and this show, and then sharing a little bit about that. I don't know how it works with content, like putting clips up, because somebody held up a picture and they copyright struck it, when I tried to put it on YouTube.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just a picture for a second, like if somebody held up a book cover. Thomas Punton held up a couple of book covers, but they were so blurry you couldn't see anything from when he held it up. But I don't know what the rules are. So until I find out the rules, unfortunately, we can't show clips or pictures. But
Yeah, well, we could just talk about it.
and I'm starting something new for all my shows. I used to do a lot of reviews. We used to interview people who made role-playing games and wrote books. Now I do that for the metaphysical books, but not for the other type of books. But I'm slowly going to be introducing, like interviewing science fiction authors and game designers and people from TV shows and things like
That's
that.
cool.
By 2023, that should be in full effect. And but the journey getting there, I guess that makes a lot of sense. It's a Star Trek themed show, so let's look at the Star Trek episodes that are playing and share what's going on, share any news. And if you guys want to be anchors for a particular show, to give like a synopsis on what happened on the other episodes or any news, we could even break it down that way. So if somebody has a favorite show, they can be in charge of keeping us up to date on the favorite show.
That sounds cool. Yeah, we've got Discovery now, has resumed for its new season, its fourth season. So I wish I could say I caught it, but I haven't. I did see only one episode of Prodigy, so I've got a lot to catch up on.
I've been waiting till the season ends and getting them from the library, and then after I see them on the library, waiting till they go on sale somewhere.
Yeah.
or find them used somewhere. But yeah, they're in my mind, so I look for them whenever I'm looking at DVDs. But so far, I've enjoyed. I didn't think I would enjoy a lot of the new shows, but I found myself enjoying all of them that I've seen so far. And Below Decks, that was actually a pleasantly, very. My wife and I both loved that. It was just so smart.
I like it too. I mean, I think it came at a good time during the pandemic, because I think it was light and funny, and it was something that was particularly attractive during the depressing, when we were in the depths of the pandemic, and it turned out to be good for its second season as well. I'm looking very much.
I really like that. I really like that. I'm a latecomer on going to it, but it just cracks me up every time I watch it.
There's all those little Easter eggs in it,
Yeah, it's very cool.
I'm glad it had Q in one of the episodes, and I'm glad Q's on Picard, and the same might be on next season too on Picard. So I'm really happy about that.
Q's a very interesting character.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to see Whoopi Goldberg back as Guinan as well, and
yes.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this new season of Picard.
Here's I have a trivia question for you. Do you know how Guinan, where that name came from?
No.
The role was specifically written for Whoopi Goldberg, and Whoopi Goldberg had a lot of say in how it was run. And she really likes I hate when the word goes right out of your head. A vaudeville, a woman who ran a vaudeville show, and her name was Texas Guinan. And that's where she got the name Guinan for, because this woman was she ran the show, and this was in the 20s when women didn't do that kind of a thing. So she was very much like the character of Guinan, very strong woman running this whole, and that's why also Guinan runs a bar, is for the same reason. And oddly enough, my great uncle was Texas Guinan's manager.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I looked at the clock. We're approaching the end of today's conversation, so I guess we'll do the news section. anything new and exciting happening with the USS Britannic?
We're just having our Christmas party in a couple of weeks. And then in the new year, we have a lot of other projects that are kind of put on. I don't know if we're doing it or not, but we are going to be at the Farpoint convention in February of next year. That's live. This year it was not live because of obvious reasons, the pandemic. And we're really looking forward to that so we can get out and see people we haven't seen in a couple of years. We also have a sort of a conference going on with, Bob, what is Keith Shipkowitz's, the Abraham Lincoln? Is that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the Abraham Lincoln and the Britannic are having a thing called North by Northwest, which will be a virtual conference type of a thing. So we're kind of getting into that also. So they're trying to find a space because we want it to be live as well as
yeah, it's gonna be hybrid. Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. And Bob, anything new with the USS Challenger in Region 7?
Yeah, we have an interesting weekend coming up on next Saturday, December 4th. We'll have members participating. In fact, my EXA will be the facilitator for a Zoom-based Region 7 conference. Unfortunately, we had to go virtual again this year, but from 10 to 6 p.m., we've got a bunch of panels, or at least we're hoping to have a bunch of panels at that point. Because of things, we had to go virtual, but we're looking forward to that and getting to see everyone again, at least in little boxes, and have some fun. And then the next day, the USS Challenger, would normally be our regular meeting, but we'll be doing a live gathering and a bit of kind of a holiday party, bringing people together and bringing their food and or ordering out and just getting together and having a nice little holiday get together. So we're looking forward to that. And then I think that will pretty much be our December plans unless another activity crops up. But we are also looking forward to going to Farpoint in February, at least a few of us. Of course, for us, it's always weather permitting, because there's been years where the weather has prevented us from making that journey. And in 2003, we were there for when we were marooned there, which was not the worst thing. I think it was one of the most fun conventions I've ever been part of. But I don't know if we want to, venture there if that kind of snowstorm. We were just happy that it happened on a Saturday night or into a Sunday morning or whatever it was, and we were stuck there. So, but we're looking forward to that in Hunt Valley in Maryland. And Shore Leave's also coming back to that same location in July, and so that looks like fun too. So we're looking forward to the return of live conventions and events.
Awesome.
We've been going to a lot of movies lately. I think we've hit more movies as a group thing. Sometimes it's only a few of us, but I think we've done more of that than we would have in a non-pandemic year, just because we love the big screen.
Yeah, it's awesome. I missed it in the time that I was away. And how can people get in contact with you and also with Starfleet District 7?
We are region-wise, region7.com. On our Facebook page is Region 7 or Starfleet Region 7. And of course, USS Challenger, we have a Facebook page, USS Challenger, and you could reach us through usschallenger.org. So,
and Anne-Marie, sorry.
That's it.
Anne-Marie, how about you? How can people reach you and reach the USS Britannic?
Well, I am the counselor on the USS Britannic. We have a website that's just been revamped and is very nice, and it's at USS Britannic, and that's BRITANNIC.org. You can find out about all that we're doing, and eventually you will actually be able to see our faces there. We're just working on permission things. So that's where all the info is.
Incredibly awesome. Thank you so very much, both of you, for being here. And thanks to Anne-Marie for so generously sharing her journey. And I'm looking forward to doing amazing things with you guys in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks to all our guests who will be watching this later on YouTube. Until next time, this is us wishing you joyous journeys and amazing adventures. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take good care. And let me see if I can find the button to cease the recording.